Aloha everyone, my name is Cap. I do developer relations at Sanity. So this is video number 4 of a mini course that we're doing on YouTube on this guide that we wrote. So you can find it at sanity.io/guides. It's titled Build Your First Blog Using React. And I'll actually just go through the bullet points because we're kind of just going over those. So in video number 1, we actually built out our React application using Create React App and our Sanity Studio. Then we connected the two. Video number 2, we set up our React routing and got that all running. And in video number 3, we put in all the functionality for both of our components, AllPosts and OnePost. So in today's video, we're actually going to be doing this last bullet point. We're going to style our entire application using Tailwind CSS. So I actually have the app running at localhost. This is where we see our AllPost page. This is a giant image of a plumeria. That is the blog post. And this is from video number 3 that we did all this. And then our second one that we have in there is this monstera leaf one, my very first blog post. And we have not styled any of this, so that's why it kind of looks like this. So what we're going to do next is we're going to style all of this. Let me go back to my home page. And yeah, let's get started. So I'm going to pull this over. Now, the first thing we want to do, here's our app. Here's our app.js and where all of our routing is happening. We have our components, our AllPosts, and our OnePost. That's pretty much it. That's all we have going on. So what we're going to want to do is go into our index.css, and this is where we're going to have our CSS live for our Tailwind. So let me actually pull over Tailwind CSS, and let me show you what's going on here. So really, Tailwind CSS is a fully customizable CSS framework, but it does have a lot of these really shorthanded ways of writing CSS. So we're going to be using all these classes that they offer. So like H will be height, W will be width, rounded full, it creates rounded edges. So that's what we're going to be using for this application. All right, so we're not going to spend too much time learning Tailwind. We will do a brief overview of Tailwind and get it styling our application. So let me quickly show you how to install it, or how we are going to install it. So if you click up there and click on, and type in installation, there are many different ways we can import Tailwind into our application. The way we're going to do it, and it seems to be not the best way because we can't customize anything, but we just want to get it into our app and we just want to get it going. So this URL right here, we're going to copy that. And let me pull this over. We are in our index.css. So at the top, we're going to import our package that we just got from the installation page. Now we also want to import a couple of fonts, but rather than going through Google Fonts, I'm just going to bring in, I'm just going to bring in the font that I'm using. So this is the Emotic. And so you can go find your font that you'd like, but this is the font that we're going to use. All right, so we are going to import one more thing at the top of our file, and it's important that this one goes above the main package, the main Tailwind package. So this is going to be for our block content. I'm going to save that. So this is the typography, and this will bring in prose from Tailwind. What it does, it helps us with our block content and being able to display that in a proper, correct way. So that's why we brought that in. We have all of our imports. Index.css, we're importing 3 different things: the typography package, the Tailwind main package, and a font that I chose. So feel free to choose any font that you'd like. Now there are a couple things we're going to change with the index.css. We don't need any of this for now. Let's just import that and let's get going. Okay, so in our AllPosts, I do know that there are 5 different divs or elements that we do want to add CSS to. Now, the way Tailwind works is the same as CSS, and parent styling will travel down to its children unless we override that. So let's actually create a div around this entire thing, just so it's kind of like the full parent. And in here, we're going to be setting some background colors. So class name is going to be equal to, and it's going to be BG green 100. So 100 is going to be the intensity of the color. If it was 900, it'd be like super dark green, and 100 is super light green. We're also going to do a min height screen and a padding of 12. So that's going to bring everything in from the sides. Now let's see where we are at. So far that gave us a little light green background, and it brought everything in on the sides. So yeah, it looks good so far. And we've only added just a little bit of Tailwind. All right, so in the next div, let's actually center this entire div. So we have our parent that has our background. Now within there, we have another div. Let's center the whole thing. So we're going to do class name is equal to container and then MX auto. So that will make all the contents within this div centered on the parent div. Now for the blog post H2, because this is text, let's actually edit the text a little bit. So we're going to do text is going to be 5XL. We want that pretty big. And we also want to make sure it's centered within itself. So we're going to do flex and then justify center. Now that's going to make our blog post. Let's check it out. Yeah. So we have our blog post text. Let me actually keep this on the same page. So we have our blog post living in the middle, and it's pretty big because we made it 5XL. Great. So for our H3, we don't want it as big, of course. So we're going to do text and then large. So not 5XL. We'll make a different color. So text gray 500. We'll do flex, justify center, and let's see what that looks like. Cool. So it's a little bit lighter. Let's actually make that a little bit darker. Let's do 600. Cool. So it's just a little bit darker. It's still centered in the page, and that looks great. Now the last thing we want to add to our H3 is a margin bottom. So margin bottom is just MB, and then 12 is how big we want it. So we gave it a little bit of space. So now I think that looks really good. Okay, now the next one we want to do is this div actually right here where all of our posts are being mapped over. We want to create a grid of content, and as we add content to it, the grid just continues to fill, but we don't have to like come in and do any CSS updates because we're going to set it up from the beginning to allow for content to continue to come in. All right, so let's do class name. So in here, we're going to do grid. Now, the cool thing about Tailwind is it's very responsive friendly, so we can very quickly make this responsive. So if we want the grid to be, it's going to fit on the page, but on a medium screen, we want grid columns and we want 2 columns. But then on a large screen, we want grid columns 3. That's how we do that. So there's going to be grid on the smallest. Medium screen is going to be 2 columns, and a large screen is going to be 3 columns. We're going to add a gap around all of them of 8. Let's save that. See what that looks like. Wow. And very quickly, it looks very good. All right, so let's just look at the responsiveness of this, and we're going to bring it in. And as I go in, there. So on the smallest screen, it's a grid. It's doing the best it can with the styling it has. But as I get bigger, and if we had 3, a third one would be filled. But notice how it leaves a space for a third because we said on large screen, make sure you have the 3 columns. Awesome. So we're moving along. All right, so we just have a couple more to do. So let's work on this span that actually holds it's kind of like our card. It will hold the image and the title for our blog post. So in here, let's do class name. And we're going to give it a different background color than the green that we put on the rest of the page. So in here, we're going to do BG white. And because we haven't done any styling for the image, we're not going to really see that white because we haven't like shrunk it down a little bit. Let's do a block content or block, a height of 64. We want relative, we want it rounded, we want a shadow. And then we're going to add a leading snug. So this will give line height or height to it because we want everything spaced just a little bit more than is default. And then the last thing we want to do is we want to give it a border. So we're going to do border on the left of 8 and the border we want to be green for 800. Cool. Now we have that all in there. Let's style our image. So class name. So we want the entire image to take up all the space that we're allotting it. So we're going to do width full and height full. We're going to give it rounded cover or rounded edges, a little rounded edges. And then that R is for the right side. Now remember, we gave it a border on the left, a green one. And then on the right part of it, it's going to have rounded edges, and you'll see that. Now we're going to do an object cover, an absolute, just so we keep everything where it's supposed to be. And the last thing we're going to do before we go look at all of our styling and how it looks is this H2. So in the span of the H2, let's do class name. We want this to be block relative to its parent and a height of full. So all the area that we're giving it, we want it to take up that entire area. Flex, we want the content to be at the end of the card. So justify end and items end. We want a padding right of 4 and a padding bottom also of 4. So that is our span for our H2. And then the last thing is directly onto our H2. Let's add some styling. So for our H2, let's manipulate the text a little bit. So we'll do text is going to be gray. We'll make it kind of dark at 800. We want the text to be large. We want the font to be bold. Padding on the x-axis of 3, padding on the y-axis of 4. We want the background color to be a red of 700. The text to be red of 100. So 700 is darker, 100 is lighter. And then the background opacity, if I can spell that, opacity of 75, and the entire thing to be rounded. All right, so if everything is in correctly, our AllPosts page should look awesome right now. Okay, now one thing I know I forgot is we need to make this block. Now that should look good. And if everything is correct, it should look pretty good. Yeah, and it does. So it looks really good. So we have a little decorative border on the left. We've rounded all these edges. All right, so it all looks good. And if we added another one, it would be right here. So we can actually very easily add content and without manipulating our CSS any further, if we don't want to, it will just populate onto our page. And then next, the fourth one will go here, fifth, sixth, so on. And if we click in, we're not done styling that one, but it does everything that it's supposed to. So that looks really good. Let's work on our OnePost. Now our last one is our OnePost page, and I do know there's a lot of divs that we want to add. So let's just create the full parent div over all of this. Let's get rid of that. Bring it down right there. Cool. So in this parent div, what we want to happen, now remember this is our OnePost page. So this will be when we click into a blog post. We're going to have a background of, we're going to do gray and pretty light at 200. We're going to do a min height screen, and then the padding around it will be 12. So that's almost exactly like what our AllPosts look like, just a different color. So that's just kind of setting the stage for our entire component. So let's work on it one section at a time. So now that we have our kind of base div, our most parent div, let's go into each section of it and let's work on this div right here that has our title, our author image, and our author's name. Okay, so within this div, we'll do this parent div, this class name. So in here, we're gonna do a background of white. We're gonna do background opacity of 75. And then we're gonna get rounded edges and a padding of 12. And just working our way down, class name for our H2, will be, we're going to do a text of 3XL, so pretty big. But then on large screens, we're going to do text of 6XL, so it's even bigger. Margin bottom of 4. All right, so next in this div, we're going to do a class name. So this div covers down to here. Okay, so our image for our author and our author's name. So in here, we're going to do flex. We're going to do justify center, and we're going to do text gray of 800, so pretty dark. For the image, let's do a class name right on the image tag. In here, let's do width of 10. We're going to do a height of 10, so it's pretty small, and then rounded full. So it's going to be a circle. So that's going to be kind of fun. The next one is going to be this H4. Same thing, class name. And let's do flex. We'll do items center, because we want that all to be centered. A padding left of 2 and a text of 2XL. So that is going to be our author's name. So that takes care of this div right here. So let's go look at what that looks like so far. So if we click here, click there. All right. So it looks like that so far, but things are moving and it's looking good. So awesome. Oh, and we have our fun little like circle avatar thing. So that's cool. So let's actually wrap this entire one that we just did in one more parent. So we're going to take that, add it right there, add a class name to it. And all right. So we're going to do absolute. We're going to do height at full. I'm just looking at my notes because there's a lot going on. I just want to make sure the styling is like exactly right. Width is full. Flex, we want items to be centered, and justify center. Now that will be a padding of 8. Now when you do just a P, it's padding all around. You can do PL, PR, and that's left or right, or PT and PB for top and bottom. Cool. So let's see what that looks like. It looks good. So it gave it a little padding, it gave it a little more styling. Now it's below that. So we got to fix that. Let's create one more div above that. Now this one's going to be wrapped around everything up top except for the block content. And let's paste that in, save it. Let's give that some styling real quick. And that should have fixed our issue of it being underneath. And we will do relative. And it does. So now it's where we want it to be. This block content we're going to bring down below, but we haven't styled that yet. So that is looking really good. Now, because we wrapped our div around our image, let's actually handle that styling. So this is our hero image, this is our main image. So let's do a width of full. We want it to cover, so we'll do object cover, and then we'll do rounded top. Cool, so save that, and let's work on our block content. And then we have a couple more things after that, and we should be done. So yeah. All right, so with our image, we actually want to do a little bit of custom CSS. So it's really big right now, okay? So what we want to do is we're going to add style. We're going to do a height of 400 pixels. Let's save that. Awesome. So now it's more of a hero image, and ignore the picture that I downloaded isn't the best quality, so that's why it looks like this. But if you had a better quality picture, it would not be so blurry. But those are my plum areas. And yeah, so by adding that little bit of custom CSS, we are able to get it looking great. Now let's move on to our block content. So our block content here, you can add the class name within the block content or the div. I'm going to do the div. So in here, we're going to do a padding on the x-axis of 16. On a large screen, that padding is going to be 48. So we're just working with responsiveness as we build it out. Next, we're going to do a padding Y of 12. And on a large screen, that padding is going to be 20. We're going to add in prose. Now remember, prose is when we added in the typography class. LG, so on a large screen, prose is going to be XL, and then max width full. Now that should look pretty good. I know there's one more thing we want to add. So at the very top, let's add to this div. We're going to do class name. We're going to do container, shadow large, MX autos. Background, we want green of 100, and we'll do rounded large. Save that, and it should look good. Okay, so let's go check it out. Yeah, that looks really good. Okay, so let's go back to our home page. We have this works and it's great. Let's click on that, and that looks really good. So as we add content to it, it will just populate into this green area that we have declared. So if we were to add content, it would just show up here, and our avatar would just show up because we've already set it. So it's not going to be needed to be hard-coded. All we're going to be doing is, and we'll go to our studio. As we add content to our studio, it will show up, it will populate. So let's actually just create one more just so I can show you. And this will be super quick. Test. Author is going to be me. We'll do an upload. We'll do that Monstera leaf again. This is my test blog, just so we can make sure that our styling is actually working. So if we go back, there it is. So it just showed up and it created a very nice, pretty grid. And if we were to bring this smaller, we've made it responsive. And right here, it breaks down to 2 and then down to 1. So everything looks really good. And that's Tailwind. Great. So that's Tailwind, and that's how awesome it is to style with Tailwind. So definitely check out the docs. Definitely get into Tailwind. It's really, really awesome, and it can help your application immensely. So thank you for watching. This is our last video number 4 of our mini course that we're doing on YouTube for this guide. Let me pull that guide up one more time. So if you go to sanity.io/guides, and I'll go to it, build your first blog using React. We went through this entire guide and built out our application, and it looks like this. We use React on the front end. All of our content is being managed by the Sanity Studio, and all the styling has been done with Tailwind. So I hope you learned a lot. I hope you have your own blog up and running, and feel free to style it or change things however you would like. This is your blog and your content, so make sure it looks like how you would like it. So thank you for watching, and I will see you in our next guide.